Chapter 1. The Enigmatic Guest Emerges. What's up, fam? Welcome back to another chilling chapter. Before we dive into today's twisted mystery, Hercule Poirot and the puzzle of the Sapphire Heirloom, hit me up. What made you smile today, and where in the world are you listening from? I'm featuring your stories in the next drop, so don't be shy. Now grab your tea, dim the lights, and get ready, because nothing in Whispers in the Fog is ever what it seems. The soft patter of rain against the window was abruptly interrupted by a blood-curdling scream that cut through the stillness of the night. It echoed through the dim corridors of the old estate, reverberating off the walls as a chilling harbinger of chaos. A woman's voice, fraught with terror, slicing through the heavy air, sent a jolt of electricity coursing through the guests assembled in the drawing room. They had been partaking in an evening of camaraderie until the unforeseen arrival of an enigmatic guest shattered the facade of tranquility. Hercule Poirot, with his distinctive mustache impeccably groomed and his silhouette strikingly composed, stood as if carved from marble, absorbing the sudden transformation of the atmosphere. Ah, but the human heart, it hides many things, mon ami, he murmured to himself, eyes narrowing perceptibly. He was deeply aware that behind every facade lay shadows of secrets, and it was often those closest to one another who held the deepest knives in a time of crisis. The guests turned to one another, their faces painted with a blend of shock and suspicion, each grappling with the implications of that harrowing scream. Among the assembly of unusual suspects was Lady Judith Branksome, the evening's ostensibly gracious host, a woman whose beauty had not faded with age, yet whose eyes harbored an unnerving depth. Known for her charitable endeavors, she had recently come into a fortune after the passing of her husband, an event that had raised eyebrows about her true affections for him. To her left stood Edward Sinclair, an ambitious literary critic renowned for his sharp quills, yet shadowed by scandal. On that very same night, he had been wrestling with a manuscript riddled with impropriety. And lastly, seated quietly by the fire, was Suleiman Aden, a brooding painter whose expressive works garnered both admiration and disdain, concealing within him a tempest of personal loss that surged beneath the surface. Poirot paced delicately toward the door leading to the source of the scream, every slow yet decisive step echoing like a drumbeat of impending revelation. As he opened the door, the sight that befell his discerning eyes was disconcerting. A maid, scarcely older than a child, lay sprawled upon the cool marble floor, her lifeless eyes staring unseeing into the void above. The vibrant red of her blood starkly contrasted against the white uniform she had worn minutes before, painting a macabre portrait of the evening's descent into madness. With her eyes on meticulous precision, Poirot began his inquiry. "My dear friends," he said, his voice steady yet commanding, "it is essential that we remain calm. Chaos is not our ally, but clarity must be." He observed the quivering hands and dropping gaze of Lady Judith as she hastily turned away from the body, a trace of guilt dancing upon her otherwise composed visage. At that moment, he noted the unease blossoming in Edward's eyes, which flitted nervously from the maid's form to Suleiman, whose face was a mask of intrepid sorrow. It was an unsettling tableau. In the hours that followed, rain continued to bombard the estate, a furious tempest stirring outside that entangled with the unrest within. Poirot spent his time examining smaller details that others overlooked. The small traces of ash on the floor, the slight crack in the ornate mirror that hung above the fireplace. Each element whispered secrets, and he hurriedly pieced together the fragments of an elaborate puzzle. The guests, too, were ushered into the room with trepidation, recounting their alibis while their voices trembled with uncertainty. "He was a troublesome girl," Lady Judith mentioned, almost too quickly, her tone betraying an underlying tension, "always wandering where she shouldn't." Edward, quick to leap upon this, remarked, "Sounds like you wished her gone, my lady. A more than convenient escape if this is a true matter of trouble." A scornful glare followed, igniting embers of animosity. Meanwhile, Suleiman's demeanor softened, his artistry seemingly at war with an internal conflict, the shadows of his emotions lying heavy upon him. As Poirot continued to listen, He jotted down notes with unerring precision, each line interwoven with questions. "Pray tell, Mr. Sinclair, what precisely was your engagement with the maid before this tragic incident?" He probed, peering deeply into Edward's facade. For a moment, panic flared within Edward's gaze before he retorted, "A critic simply observes. I've no need for the hired help." But Poirot felt something was amiss, every word echoing in his mind like a misplayed note in a symphony. Through the course of the night, as the guests tangled in webs of conspiracy, Poirot discovered forgotten letters hidden in a drawer, stained on one edge, a hint of emotion buried beneath the surface, and a clue that led him to believe there was more to both Lady Judith's hand and Edward's critiques than met the eye. A slew of violent lashings would seep through the ink of words both spoken and unspoken, revealing that no one bore witness to the maid's last moments. Alibis began to fray like an aged tapestry as shadows unfurled. Finally, as dawn crept through with a tentative light fighting against the thunderous storm, Poirot gathered everyone in the drawing room. "Ah, mes amis," he declared, his voice resonating with chilling certainty. "You, all of you, stand entangled in a web of shared darkness." He revealed the veil of deception spun by those present, each of them holding a piece to the heart of this ghastly affair. The maid had stumbled upon a secret, something far more precious and perilous than their surreal lives allowed. And her death was not merely the demise of a single soul, but rather a revelation that would send ripples of betrayal far beyond the walls of that cursed estate. Just then, an unexpected twist pierced through Poirot's deductions like a blade. An unwelcome truth lay in the memory of the events of the past few days which concocted a narrative rich with layers of grief and malice unbeknownst to him. Betrayal emerged from an unexpected place, and the weight of emotional wounds turned out to be the fiercest weapon in their arsenal. As he unraveled the layers of deceit caught in the few remaining hours of darkness, Poirot could only reflect on human frailty and the darkness that snaked its way through the heart, a truth that would linger long after the storm had passed. "Indeed," he concluded with a wry smile, "it is not the circumstances of life which define us, but the shadows we allow ourselves to dwell within." With those words fell a solemnity across the room, and the resonance of his truth left the guest reeling. The entwined, desperate fables of the characters now lay bare, washed in the waning light that marked the end of an unholy night. Chapter 2. The Sapphire Unveiled. The flickering candlelight cast long, twisted shadows across the drawing room, struggling against the violent onslaught of wind. Battering the old estate, the storm raged like a wild beast, entwining with the hushed whispers of the assembled guests, each breath heavy with the weight of the unspoken. Suddenly, a crash echoed from the direction of the glass display cabinet, sending a tremor of dread through the gathered party. A flash of glittering blue reflecting the candlelight illuminated a horrific tableau. The revered sapphire heirloom lay shattered on the floor, glinting ominously amidst shards that seemed to mock both opulence and tragedy. Throughout the room, reactions spiraled into disarray. Lady Judith Branksom's face drained of color, her elegant countenance now marred with unease. "No, not the sapphire," she gasped, clutching her pearls as if they were lifelines in tumultuous waters. Edward Sinclair stood rigid, eyes darting between the fragments on the floor, his mind racing with scandalous implications. His already tarnished reputation threatened to buckle under the weight of this new misfortune. Meanwhile, Suleiman Aden, his expression reflecting an artist's anguish, stood by the fireplace, where shadows danced upon the mantel, consuming him in their darkness as he surveyed the scene. "What have we done?" he murmured, stepping back, as if the act itself was a reflection of the chaos boiling beneath. With a composed disposition emblematic of his character, Hercule Poirot surveyed the room with keen interest. "Ah, but the heart can be an intricate maze, full of traps and misdirections. Mes amis," he declared, his calm voice slicing through the storm's howl. Each face bore traces of turmoil, revealing muffled pasts and concealed motives, prompting Poirot's investigative instincts to awaken fully. The sapphire, a symbol of wealth and status, held untold secrets, and with its shattering, those secrets too began to unravel within the shadows. Split into numerous fragments like the trust held among the guests, Poirot posited that the sapphire was more than mere jewelry. It acted as the fulcrum of a far deeper mystery. Lady Judith had inherited it after the death of her husband, prompting whispers of foul play surrounding his demise. Edward, ever the opportunist, had expressed disdain for such inherited symbols, and yet his sudden nervousness while evaluating the broken relic revealed another layer of intrigue. Then there was Suleiman, who had once painted the lady's portrait adorned with the gem. Yet his reaction now suggested a history entwined with the sapphire that demanded further scrutiny. As the storm continued its rampage, Poirot set forth to conduct a thorough investigation. He began with Lady Judith, his piercing gaze fixing upon her. "My lady, might you recount the circumstances leading up to this calamity?" The question hung in the air, heavy with implications. She clasped her hands, the tremor in her voice betraying her regal demeanor. I merely dusted it. It has always been safely displayed, honored and enjoyed by my guests." But the evasion in her eyes spoke louder than her words. Poirot sensed layers of hidden truths wrapped tightly around her. Next, Poirot turned his attention to Edward. "Mr. Sinclair, I believe you had expressed a penchant for analyzing jewels in your literary critiques. What observances do you have regarding our cherished heirloom?" A flicker of panic darted across Edward's face, though he retorted with bravado, "I am but a critic, Poirot. My motivations lie within ink-stained words, not within such pedestrian concerns." His feigned nonchalance barely masked an unsettling awareness, as if he were well aware that the sapphire carried with it dangers he wished to sidestep. Suleiman remained silent, his melancholic aura emanating a sense of foreboding. In his work as a painter, beauty often shrouded deeper meanings. Hence, Poirot cautiously probed, "Could you, Mr. Iden, provide insight into your relationship with both the sapphire and Lady Judith?" At this, Suleiman's eyes darkened, surfacing memories he wished to forget. "My art carries echoes of their lives, Monsieur Poirot. It is impossible to forge deeper connections without feeling their burdens," he confessed. Yet even as he spoke, a shadow clouded his brow, hinting at emotions groaning beneath the surface. As Poirot painstakingly collected these fragments of dialogue, he noticed more subtle clues. A small, glittering piece of blue sapphire aligned perfectly beneath the edge of the cabinet, half hidden from view, seemingly discarded. The significance of this remnant grew as night continued to envelop the room. Perhaps a confrontation had sparked prior to the shattering, or a desperate act had been committed in fear of exposure. With the pieces beginning to form a cohesive narrative, Poirot gathered the trio once more. "I am to conclude that we have witnessed an event laden with premeditated chaos," he proposed, his eyes scanning their faces for cracks in their facades. But just as he prepared to delve deeper into their unknowing confessions, a thunderous crash resonated outside the estate, sending tremors through the foundation. An unexpected revelation interjected into the growing tension. In a fit of stormy fury, the night not only revealed the fragility of their luxuries but also masked their hidden betrayals. Each character exhibited hints of misalignment, but one pawed deeper than the rest, cloaked in darkness. A red herring intended to steer Poirot madly off course. As they shifted in discomfort, Poirot clamped down on his ever-perceptive instincts, realizing the facade employed by one of them harbored deeper, tragic undertones that beggared belief. Finally, as tensions reached a proverbial boiling point, Poirot summoned the guests to the center of the drawing room. "My dear friends, the tapestry of your deceptions is unraveling," he announced gravely. "The maid's demise was but a fragment of a greater tale connected to this shattered heirloom. You stand here not merely as guilty bystanders, but as the puppeteers of a woven, intricate plot." The room held its breath, eyes wide with anticipation, as Poirot's next revelation promised both clarity and torment. "Ah, but I must remind you that within the tumult of greed and despair lies the greatest betrayal. It is not merely a jewel that ignites this chaos, but rather the heart of a cunning accomplice. A truth hidden within the brushstrokes of Suleiman Aiden's forlorn canvases." An audible gasp broke the quiet, and with it fell Suleiman's mask of sorrow, revealing a tempest of emotions as he whipped towards the others. "You do not understand," he shouted, the knife of their realities thrusting deep into his own heart. The sapphire was more than a jewel. It was a bond between my love for Judith and the last memories of a life stolen from me. I merely wished to protect it, and in that passion I shattered not only glass, but hearts. With that, the estate bore witness to the culmination of betrayal and lost love. And Hercule Poirot, amid the breathless silence, etched a final truth in the shadows of that tumultuous night. Indeed, it is within our deepest desires that we may find our greatest downfalls, he uttered softly, leaving a lingering resonance that would haunt them long after the storm had passed. Chapter 3. Secrets Beneath the Surface. A chill slithered through the dimly lit halls of the estate, resembling the ghost of dread floating on the air as the storm howled outside. The faint glow of candlelight trembled against the oppressive darkness that refused to yield even a hint of comfort. It was there in the obscurity of that wretched night that a soft, agonizing gasp pierced the silence, a sound all too human, yet curiously devoid of its natural context. It came from the door leading to the study, where two figures emerged, their faces pale and wide-eyed, dragged from the depths of troubled reverie. Hercule Poirot, perched upon the edge of an ornate chair, did not flinch at the sudden disturbance. His aquiline features, often regarded as expressions of aloof confidence, now bore a subtle glimmer of anticipation. "Mes amis," he addressed the assemblage, the barely contained tension thick enough to suffocate. "It appears we are upon the precipice of yet another revelation, yes? With each moment that ticks by, the shadows deepen, concealing more than they reveal." Lady Judith Branksome, her once polished exterior diminished by the recent revelations, clasped her hands. Together her knuckles blanched. "The maid," she uttered breathlessly. "What more could have come to pass? It cannot be another death." She trembled, not merely from the storm's gale, but from dread that echoed within her soul. Edward Sinclair, who had previously feigned indifference, revealed his unease now. The budding panic subtly etched across his brow. "We are already haunted by betrayal. Do we dare invite more calamity?" His brow furrowed, betraying the tumult that raged beneath his bravado. Suleiman Iden, who loomed just a step behind, his countenance becoming darker as specters of guilt and love wrestled for dominance within him, whispered, "Perhaps the surface is but a mirror, reflecting the hidden depths of our souls. We are ensnared in a tragedy that binds us." His artistic musings danced dangerously close to foreboding, and Poirot's gaze sharpened with interest. As they gazed towards the door from whence they had emerged, a thunderous clap echoed louder than their heartbeat, shaking the foundations of their sanctuary. The ominous growl of nature seemed to lift momentarily, leaving but silence. And thus Poirot knew that beneath that silence lay a web of secrets waiting to be unearthed. The investigation commenced with Poirot seamlessly transitioning from the drawing room to the confines of the study, cloaked in shadows yet invigorated by the intoxicating scent of speculation. "Pray welcome the chaos," he mused softly to himself, though his mind was already unraveling the threads of fear stitched sharply into the fabric of his companion's actions. "Tell me, Lady Judith," he inquired, his voice serenely cutting through the tension, "wherein the bounds of this estate were you when the maid's final sigh escaped her lips?" Her answer came with a startle, as though awakening from a stupor. "I lacked awareness at such a crude hour, Monsieur Poirot. The darkness enshrouded our household. Everywhere I turned, shadows lurked." She glanced away, the weight of her memories doing little to dispel the concern in her eyes. In that moment, Poirot noted the subtle tremor in her voice, a quirk that hinted at a deeper disquiet unassociated with the storm. "And you, Edward?" He turned his focus, noting Sinclair's nervous fidgeting with his collar. "You harbored a particular disdain for the sapphire that adorned Lady Judith's neck? Is it not so? A disdain laced with opportunity, one could assume?" "An opportunity past," Edward snapped, teeth gritted. I spoke only to assert artistic truth. The public's affection for such artifacts is trivial at times. Yet I am also, but I assure you, the very notion of profit eludes me." His fervor and sudden anger betrayed more than a mere pretense. Perhaps it harbored unsightly truths. Suleiman, having observed the exchange in silence, stepped forth, passion sparking through his traditionally stoic demeanor. We shall speak of artistry and love, not banal treasures of the world, Edward. You remain blind. A moment of stillness enveloped them. Poirot watched the interplay between the three, his inner thoughts racing as he pried for further understanding. Ah, but the human heart. It hides many things, mon ami. Underneath layers of artistry, an artist's true expression is layered not solely in appreciation, but often burdened by resentment. That suspicion continued to spiral as he again invoked their tempers. But tell me, what connection do you both share with this maid? Have you spoken her name beyond the moment of her untimely departure? What secrets might she have uncovered before her pulse dimmed? The room fell silent once more, a swirling vortex of emotions tethered amongst them. Each stroke of Poirot's words peeled back the veil of innocence, laying bare the raw human impulses at play. Perhaps they had all merged into one being driven by need, a silent symmetry between ambition and loss woven tightly together. As the storm howled into the depths of night, Poirot had begun to uncover the web of mysteries surrounding him. A fragile piece of paper discreetly caught in the corner of the study caught Poirot's skilled eye. Intricately folded, it hinted at clandestine meetings between Lady Judith and the maid. Upon closer examination, dense ink captured words of desperation. To conquer secrecy clouds surrounded by the specter of her own tragic choices. Ah, he murmured, piecing the puzzle seamlessly. The maid's knowledge extended beyond mere servitude, did it not? An understanding of your past entwined with the sapphire's curse. Judith's expression shifted as the darkness of her past threatened to surface, constricting the truth against her throat. She knew of things best left buried, she stammered, of my late husband's affairs, the whispers of his treachery with which she wielded her subtle power. Caught in the threads of abandonment, Poirot turned to Suleiman, his brow furrowed with incredulity. And you, dear artists, hold a deeper bond, a shared tragic tale written on sacred canvases. Yet the exquisite suffering within your brushstrokes also speaks of a love torn asunder. As Suleiman averted his gaze, something deep inside him cracked. Is it love, Monsieur Poirot, or survival? The bitterness of despair brushed starkly against the intricate line, one that led to betrayal nestled cozily within their dramatic lexicon. As Poirot gathered the fragments of their truths, a sudden revelation struck him. In the threads of their fabricated realities lay artifice, deception, and ultimately an eve of reckoning. The maid was indeed lingering between breaths of life and death, tacitly holding your stories hostage. The atmosphere shifted palpably, and with it came the clamorous realization echoing the storm outside. Amid the cloistered darkness, ones they held dear transformed into mirrors of their fractures. It became evident that the maid had not slipped unknowingly from light into dark. Rather, she had been thrust into the heart of that murky tempest initiated by their hands. Yet there was betrayal yet unrevealed, slipping through the fingers of expectation. Poirot pieced together the strayed silhouettes of intentions present that night. The shattering of the sapphire, followed by the absence of accountability, aligned, treacherously, with one haunting discovery left unconcealed. You, Lady Judith, Poirot declared, his voice even yet laden with gravity, held the weakest hand, ultimately entangled in a greater deception, a revelation directly tied to the fatal secrets we have culled from the depths of your memories. You may mask your sins with lost opulence, but the heart, it always speaks truth to power. In that moment, the tension coiled tighter, as Lady Judith stood paralyzed, emotions ricocheting between fear and revelation. The shadows turned sinister, illuminating a portrait as the echoes of betrayal whispered through the night. A profound truth shattering the last remnants of unity before her, exposing the scars upon her heart. Indeed, Poirot concluded, but human complexity never bends easily to comprehension. We deceive ourselves in a frenzy to escape oblivion, yet the walls we build often become shields against our own truths. As the storm continued to batter the estate, the final slice of truth lay heavy upon them. The night bore witness to how veils of betrayal enshroud our passions, and as ever, Poirot left them with a meta-aura of haunting reflections. Ah, it is the secrets beneath the surface that emerge with the heaviest tide, leaving behind scars whose weight may never wither. Indeed, they redefine our very essence. Chapter 4. A Twisted Alibi. A scream tore through the oppressive silence of the night, high and shrill, shattering the stillness that enveloped the old estate like a damp shroud. The storm outside raged with furious intensity, wind howling like some feral beast, shaking the foundations and sending shivers down spines. Within the study, a body lay sprawled across the floor, the lifeless form of the maid, her eyes wide open, forever trapped in an expression of horror. A single candle flickered precariously on the polished mahogany desk, illuminating a scene of chaos that would haunt the estate for years. Hercule Poirot stood at the threshold, his keen mind already weaving through the tapestry of emotions that filled the air. The room was charged, each breath pregnant with unspoken fears and hidden truths. Lady Judith Branksome kneeled, beside the anguished form, her hands trembling violently, while Edward Sinclair and Suleiman Aidan stood rooted to the spot, their faces a canvas of shock and disbelief. Poirot studied them, his gaze as sharp as a winter frost. "Mon ami," he began softly, "with the veil of death drawn so unceremoniously over our midst, I find myself marveling at the complexities of the human soul. A twisted alibi awaits us, n'est-ce pas?" With careful precision, Poirot stepped inside, observed the corners of the room, the angles made grotesque by shadows cast against the walls. He approached the body as Edward reluctantly pulled Lady Judith back to her feet, her sobs a dissonant harmony against the tempest outside. "We must call the authorities," Edward stammered, glancing back toward the door. This cannot be." His indecisiveness spoke of deeper fears. "And why was the maid here at this hour?" Poirot interjected, his voice carrying a weight that demanded consideration. His gaze met Lady Judith's tear-streaked face, a fragile facade of composed desperation, while Suleiman shifted uncomfortably. "It is the perilous relationship between intimacy and betrayal that intrigues me," he mused. Yes, but this does not answer the question." "Monsieur Poirot," Edward burst forth, pacing with agitation as he wrung his hands. "We are haunted by more than just a tragic demise. We are bound by shadows of guilt." Poirot turned to him with a glimmer in his eye. "Ah, but the shadows hide much. My friend, intentions often masquerade beneath the guise of fear." As he surveyed the room, something caught his eye. A slick, crimson stain spattered on the edge of the desk beside a crumpled letter, as if the ink had spilled forth in a moment of desperate writing. "And what of this?" he queried, moving closer. "Leave it be," Judith cried, but the urgency in her voice betrayed her. Poirot gently lifted the paper, revealing an impossible declaration birthed from trembling hands, a note detailing clandestine meetings with an unnamed suitor, tucked away in the shadows of night. "It would appear that our maid was privy to certain secrets, not merely her own," Poirot remarked, casting a discerning gaze over the assembled suspects. "Secrets, yes, but fraught with danger," Suleiman chimed in, nearly trembling as he fought to mask his inner turmoil. What was the maid seeking to unveil? My muse, Lady Judith's past? Perhaps she was a specter, haunting the walls of our deceptions. "Two sides to every story, dear artist," Poirot replied knowingly. "As you may well understand." His mind raced, piecing together the thorny web. All three possessed motives lurking just beneath the surface. A twisted alibi hung in the air, tainted by fear, betrayal, and a smattering of rage. "May I inquire where each of you was during this unforgiving storm?" Poirot asked, his voice calm and steady, but layered with an intensity that demanded honesty. "Do you, dear Judith, possess a reliable alibi for this hour? Or were you perhaps consumed by the tempest of your own emotions?" She recoiled slightly at the insinuation, words faltering before the brilliance of his scrutiny. "I was in the attic," she said, her voice trembling but firm. "I sought solace in my late husband's belongings, but I would never harm her." "Would you, Edward?" Poirot pressed on. The tension thickened with his words, wrapping around them like the tendrils of the storm outside. You have a disdain for jewels, yet were you not envious of her connection to the sapphire? Were whispers shared during late-night revelry tangled in an inescapable fate? Enough with these insinuations, Edward snapped, an unbecoming flush brimming in his cheeks. I am an artist. I seek to expose truth, not shatter lives. The maid had no role in my motives. Ah, but how easily the heart can deceive, mon ami, Poirot countered sharply, pausing to watch the flickering candlelight dance above the shadows. In moments of despair, we often find our latent truths resurfacing like ghosts from the depths. With the emotional tension suffusing the air, Suleiman spoke, his voice a whisper thin as the paper in Poirot's hands. I was nearby, contemplating the very nature of love and sorrow, if we can even call it love at all. The maid, she revealed too much about both Judith and my past. And therein lies the foundation of my inquiry, Poirot responded smoothly, as new possibilities unfurled inside him. The storm outside howled like a predator beseeching entry, yet here they remained bound in their entangled narratives. With questions swirling, Poirot distilled the essence of their responses, drawing forth the strands of deceit woven between them. As the investigation deepened, the layers began to unfurl, revealing a tapestry rich with unease. A piece of paper hidden beneath one of the shelves, nearly obscured by dust, caught Poirot's eye. Upon retrieving it, he found it contained a visitation record, a set of names, all pointing towards an unsavory connection between the maid and a man of dubious reputation. A new suspect rose from the shadows. Ah, mon ami, Poirot stated with a slow deliberation. Perhaps our tragic maid was entangled with forces beyond this mansion's darkened reign. She knew far more than she let slip, leading us astray. Who other than the one she visited a fortnight past could blend into this chaos? A loud crash reverberated through the estate, rattling the frames off the walls as though the very structure itself wished to expel the rising tension. She was to meet a man, Poirot deciphered aloud, to divulge what she held in secret. Perhaps that man is not merely an outsider looking in, but a masquerade woven tighter amongst us. For a brief moment, silence enveloped them as the three suspects turned pale, suspicion unfolding their justifications into paralyzing fear. Poirot watched them, observing the shifting of eyes as guilt etched deeper into their postures. In truth, Poirot concluded with a glimmer of understanding, the heart is prone to twists and turns that lead us astray. The bonds we forge can prove to be the very nooses that choke our lives. Reveal to me the truth, and perhaps the shadows shall yield. Alas, I am but a simple artist, caught between love and envy, Suleiman whispered finally, tears glistening in his eyes as he struggled with conflicting emotions. I know little of fate beyond brush and canvas, yet the allure of wealth and beauty haunts me. As Poirot finalized his interpretation of the tangled web, a realization struck him, provoking ire that birthed a surge deep within the fissures of trust. A final twist remained concealed, lurking beneath the darkest backstory. Ah, but in the end, it is the twisted alibi of the heart that reveals our saddest truths, Poirot stated resolutely. The lesson here is stark. Betrayal takes many forms, often encircling us like the very storm that lashes against these walls. In that moment, it became clear that despite the endless twists of the plot, the greatest tragedy was already laid bare. A cycle of betrayal born from the very shadows they all held dear. The silence that followed was a testament to the unexpected depths of darkness resting within their very souls, each carrying the weight of their own hidden truths, bound by tragedy forevermore. Chapter 5. The Cryptic Note. A flash of lightning illuminated the gathering gloom, revealing a shadowy figure in the hallway. Distressing scene unfolding as the candle on the grand table sputtered and flickered against the growing tempest outside. Poirot's heart sank. A broken promise now resided among the walls of the estate, the oppressive air thick with hushed secrets and collapsing trust. The nighttime storm served as an ominous backdrop to the unraveling chaos that lay ahead, its wailing winds a haunting symphony to the dark events that were destined to unfold. In the dim light, Lady Judith stood as a fragile silhouette, her fingers trembling as they brushed against a crumpled note that lay upon the floor, an unintentional harbinger of shadows. "Look, Poirot," she stammered, her voice barely above a whisper, eyes wide with panic. "The maid. She was carrying this when I found her." Her gaze flickered towards Edward Sinclair, whose ashen face betrayed a man crumbling beneath the weight of unspeakable fear. Nearby, Suleiman Aden clenched his jaw, watching with an air of tension that simmered. Just beneath the surface, his hands balled into fists. "Ah, but the human heart, it hides many things, mon ami," Poirot murmured, his keen mind absorbing the scene like a sponge drawing up water. As he approached the note, he noted the way Lady Judith's body tensed at his proximity, a deer caught in the crosshairs of a hunter. The note itself, marred by urgency and smudged ink, contained lines that hinted at clandestine meetings, an invitation marked with pathos and a hint of danger. "A cryptic note indeed," Poirot pronounced, his eyes narrowing on the ominous lines that spoke of secrets best left unsaid. With deliberate calm, Poirot began to unpick the threads of each character's delicate psyche. Judith Branksome, once the epitome of grace, now appeared ensnared in a web of despair, her late husband's ghost silently haunting the corridors. What desperation prompted her to summon the maid at this hour? Her emotions wavered like a flame, flickering between grief and guilt. The connection between Lady Judith and the maid was murky, yet deserving of examination. He turned his gaze toward Edward Sinclair, the artist stewing in suffocating envy, eyes darting as if seeking refuge from their accusations. Fueled by desires curdled under the weight of jealousy, Edward's obsession with jewels and beauty cast a veil over his integrity. Perhaps his muse was not merely the canvas before him, but the very life breathing within these walls, tainted by betrayal that raged deep beneath the surface. And then there was Suleiman Aden, a man touched by the brush of tragedy. His heart ached with unfulfilled dreams. The memories he carried of past loves, intertwined with creativity and the specter of loss, made him an artist known for capturing the fragile beauty of life. Yet he seemed to wear the mask of sorrow as a guise, capable of harboring darkness. The intersection of love and jealousy danced at the edges of his thoughts. And together with the maid, he held connections, entwined with danger. The atmosphere was electric, exacerbated by the crackling of lightning outside and the rhythmic ticking of a clock inside, an unwelcome reminder of the passing moments they could not reclaim. Poirot descended further into the murky depths of the investigation. "Mademoiselle Judith," Poirot inquired softly, "please enlighten me. What exactly did you discuss with the maid before her untimely demise?" Judith swallowed hard, glancing away as she reasoned her response. I merely instructed her to mind her own affairs, to not spread rumors. Yes, she had begun to see too much. It suffocated me." Her voice trembled as though she was teetering on the edge of a precipice, unsure of whether the truth might serve as her salvation or her undoing. "Interesting," Poirot mused, allowing a pregnant pause to linger in the room. The air, thick with trepidation, made the silhouettes of the gathered figures stretch and distort. "You speak of rumors and caution, but did you not bear any fears of what she might share? Trust is a fragile thing, n'est-ce pas?" He could see the flicker of panic in her eyes, a spark igniting the truth that lay buried beneath layers of deceit. Edward interjected, his voice an unsettling blend of defensiveness and anguish. "What of you, Poirot? You hunt us like prey, yet how much do we really know of our true intentions? This cryptic note, the artist and the maid shared more than idle conversation?" His fists clenched tightly, the tension wrapped around them like a noose. "Perhaps it was she who sought to undermine our very connection." "Ah, how easily suspicion can morph into blame," Poirot countered, preserving his composure. "Yet, dear Edward, I implore you, perceive what lies behind the facade. In seeking to unearth truths, one can easily overlook them." His eyes flitted between the two, searching for fingerprints upon their psyche, as the shadows danced mischievously around them. As the investigation wore on, Poirot's instincts sharpened, leading him to examine the cryptic note more closely. With a flick of his wrist, he revealed its edges, noting the trembling script and the peculiar smudge near the signature. A lingering touch, or perhaps a push from an unwanted hand? Caution is your ally, yet perhaps you, Monsieur Suleiman, could lend clarity on that signature, he proposed, knowing the hints of artistry lay beneath his fluency with ink. The artist recoiled, emotion flickering across his face, revealing layers of vulnerability intertwined with bravado. It means nothing, he protested, but his voice held a threat of panic. The maid had no role in our hidden affairs. I won her affection, yet she too sought treasures from another. She wished to weave herself into our lives. Ah, but betrayal, my friends, it runs deeper, Poirot replied, the rhythm of his words matching the storm outside, as he deftly laid out the pieces of the puzzle before them. As we pore over this served truth, we may not yet have struck the heart of the matter. Then with a sudden twist, Poirot recalled the visitation record he had discovered earlier, bringing the pieces of the puzzle into sharper focus. A week ago, our maid met a man of dubious reputation. Is that so? The room fell silent as the weight of the revelation sunk in. Our tangled lives of envy and fear led to these shadows creeping across our paths. At this disclosure, Edward's color paled, the reality of the threads weaving deeper, yet revealed, an unexpected bond. You cannot accuse me. No word of this was shared, he cried, anguish laced through his voice as the walls of his carefully constructed reality began to crumble. Yet the final twist loomed closer. Poirot's gaze, sharp with clarity, turned toward Lady Judith. Mon ami, thou art the very tragedy that graces this narrative. The cryptic note serves a purpose, not merely of the maid's desires, but of how you crafted your very own entanglements. Her eyes widened, a realization, clawing at her insides as betrayal danced beyond her reach. Amidst the chaos, Poirot drew in a breath and recited the final lines of the mystery, piecing together the fragments that surged like a tide. The maid wished to reveal shallows of love, yet she found herself consumed, ensnared in the tempest of ambition, he stated, tone edged with conviction. For it is the shadows lurking within our hearts that gift rise to inevitable betrayal. Thus, enmity born from passion turns within us, a concealed dagger waiting to strike. As the final threads of the narrative wound together amidst the crackling storm, the confessions spilled forth like cracked mirrors, shattered into reality. The candle flickered one last time, darkness lifting to reveal the scars forged by secrets and sorrow. Poirot, the harbinger of clarity amidst chaos, stepped back, the bitter taste of revelation swirling upon his lips. In the end, every heart bears its own tragedy, a tragic fate fashioned in the echoes of broken trust. With that, a silence befell them, binding their souls in the awakening light of sorrow and betrayal. Chapter 6. Shadows of Deception. The ancient mansion trembled as ferocious winds howled outside, rattling the seemingly immovable structure to its very core. In that thick, suffocating darkness, a scream pierced the night, a haunting cry echoing like a phantom through the damp hallways, stirring long-buried secrets. Poirot emerged from the shadows, his heart thudding as he traced the source of the sound, knowing that, inevitably, it was merely the prelude to chaos. Ah, but the tumult of the human heart, it harbors a tempest more turbulent than any storm, he murmured to himself, steeling his resolve. The candlelight flickered nervously, casting dancing shadows that intertwined like deceitful spirits upon the walls. He found himself in the opulent drawing room, where the shadows of 4 figures were stark against the glint of an ornate chandelier, now the only witness to the unfolding horror. At its center lay a figure sprawled on the marbled floor. Lady Judith, her lifeless eyes wide with an unfulfilled question, a note clutched tightly in her hand, an enigma that flickered with morbid urgency. Edward Sinclair, the artist, stood stark against the fireplace, his face drained of color, jaw clenched tight. The tension in his posture spoke volumes. He was fighting demons that danced at the edges of his sanity, fueled by envy and an artist's despair. It cannot be, he rasped, trembling yet unwilling to relinquish his grip on the semblance of composure. She was my muse, my foundation. Who would dare? A shudder ran through him, as if he were invested not merely in her death, but in the fragility of his own existence. Suleiman Aydin, the tortured poet, hovered near the window, shadows clinging to his apprehensive form like a shroud. His expressive eyes darted, surveying the room, betraying a heart that bore the weight of loss. A loss crafted by words sorrowfully, left unsaid. An untimely end, indeed, he whispered, voice barely lifting above the tumult outside. Yet what truths lie within this tragedy? As Poirot knelt beside the lifeless body, examining the torn note that fluttered in Lady Judith's grasp, he felt the air thicken. The shadows shifted menacingly around them as if sensing the potential for betrayal. The ink was barely dry, its hurried strokes betraying the urgency of the message. He allowed the weight of the words to settle in his mind, drawing forth connections that others seemed incapable of perceiving. "Ah, treachery weaves its tapestry with the finest threads," he remarked softly, "but it is the unexamined heart that fuels the darkness of deception." With methodical precision, Poirot scanned the room, his keen eye catching details that had slipped by the others. A smudge on the floor, the stark absence of Judith's beloved gold locket that hung about her neck like a fallen star. As he rose, he cast those present in a contemplative light. "Tell me, gentlemen," he began, the authority in his voice a reminder of the gravity of their situation, "what awaited Lady Judith tonight? For this gathering is shrouded in a deeper riddle." Edward shifted uncomfortably, glancing momentarily at Suleiman, as if seeking the strength to divert the blame. "We were reminiscing, discussing her late husband's affairs," he stammered, forcing bravado into his voice. "Hadn't we gone beyond the shadows of judgments?" His attempt to mask vulnerability only served to unearth more chaos. "Indeed," Suleiman interjected, his voice smooth yet laced with tension. "Her husband had many secrets, each more intriguing than the last. Perhaps it is these shadows that delivered her to this fate." A flicker of an idea ignited in Poirot's mind. This was no mere act of jealousy or violence, but a carefully orchestrated play laced with revenge. As he continued his inquisition, Poirot examined the subtle micro-expressions that adorned the faces of both men. "But tell me, what of the maid? Did she not provoke your wrath, Edward?" Poirot posed the question with a serene gaze, knowing well how envy would whisper sweet nothings into the ears of would-be suspects. Edward faltered, the flicker of anger coursing through him palpable, and responded with vehement denial. "I would not harm her. Our conflict was but a mere flicker amidst the canvas of my desperation." Unraveling beneath scrutiny, the conversation drifted. Poirot remained, unapologetically deliberate, noting the way Suleiman's brow knit together at the mention of the maid, an emotion that sparked interest. "You both shared a connection, did you not? Could it not have been the sacrifices made in the arts that have led to this?" His penetrating gaze scrutinized their every movement, dissecting the fabric of their relationships. "Sacrifices lead only to futility," Suleiman responded bitterly, masking a deeper truth. As bitter as the wind outside, his words sliced through the room, carrying with them a hint of desperation. What price had been paid for love? He cast a wary glance at Edward, the unspoken challenge acting as an electric charge, revealing the fault lines lurking beneath the surface. Hours passed, the clock's monotonous ticking a reminder of time slipping away as Poirot pieced together the stories of these wounded souls. He sensed a dissonance, a chaotic energy woven from conflicting motives and hidden truths. Then came the realization. Lady Judith in life had been a master manipulator, ensnaring hearts in her quest for adoration. Yet perhaps she had indirectly directed her downfall. Finally, as the tempest howled outside, Poirot gathered the remnants of his thoughts, ready to unveil the truth. With a graceful motion, he turned towards the anxious faces, the ebb and flow of emotions visible to a keen eye. "Ah, cher ami," Poirot began, his voice cutting through the electric air. "The tragedy that lays before us is not merely one of loss, but of betrayal misplaced, driven by passions unspoken." He paused, allowing the weight of his words to envelop them. "But what if I speak of a red herring, one that draws attention away from the true foe among us?" The men stiffened, the tension palpable as Poirot continued. "The anguish stirs within each of you, yet who truly orchestrated this tragic concert?" A flick of recognition crossed Edward's face, And in this moment of vulnerability, Poirot perceived the shifting allegiances. It was never the maid who posed a threat. No, it was the darkness brewing within you both, disguised as friendship. His voice bore the weight of certainty, threading the needle of understanding through each motive before them. Suleiman's heart sank, his bravado shattering, revealing the truth he had hoped to hide. "She threatened everything we built," he uttered softly, the betrayal weighing heavy on his shoulders. "We shared secrets, desires entwined, yet she sought to expose us, to flaunt our sins." His admission cut deeper than any knife. But Poirot was not finished. The final twist hung in the air like a predator waiting in the shadows. And so it is poetic that Lady Judith played the very instrument of her demise. Each note struck was merely a prelude to the inevitable betrayal, from both you and Edward, who sought to control her fate in ways yet unnamed. As Poirot laid bare the tangled ambitions of the night, the masked deceptions, the emotional betrayals, the storm outside raged, yet slowly settled as clarity dawned within the room. The clock struck midnight, its toll echoing solemnly through the space, capturing the collective breath of despair in that moment. "In the end, darlings," Poirot concluded, his voice firm yet gentle, "it is the shadows that lurk within our hearts that beckon the tempest of our undoing." The finality of his statement hung heavy within the air, an oppressive weight that they would never shake off. The revelation of their sins and the darkness that they had nurtured would forever bind them in a cycle of sorrow. As the candle flickered one last time, the shadows reclaimed their territory once more, leaving the truth raw and exposed, waiting for the dawn that would never come. Chapter 7. The Heirloom's Curse. A blood-curdling scream shattered the stillness of the night, setting off a cacophony of shadows dancing wildly along the grand walls of Eddington Manor. Rain lashed against the windows, and thunder rumbled ominously overhead, as if the very heavens were enraged. Hercule Poirot, his usual calm disrupted, approached the source of the scream with an urgency that belied his normally measured demeanor. In the candlelit hall, he found Lady Eveline collapsed at the bottom of the grand staircase, eyes wide and brimming with terror, clutching a family portrait that trembled in her grip. The air was thick with palpable fear, echoing the frantic rhythm of throbbing hearts. "What has occurred, madame?" Poirot inquired, his voice steady amidst the madness, though his keen mind raced. Lady Eveline startled, her gaze flickering towards Poirot, then back to the portrait that bore the sepia-toned likeness of Sir Archibald, her late husband, whose long-lost heirloom, a legendary ruby pendant, had sparked a long-standing family feud. "It is the curse! The heirloom!" she gasped, her words tumbling out like a torrent. "It brings only misfortune, and now, my brother is dead." Her voice choked with emotion, a raw wound laid bare, amidst the chaos. As the storm raged outside, Poirot surveyed the scene, absorbing each detail: the cracked porcelain vase on the floor, the faint outline of a shrouded figure slipping around the corner of the tapestry, and the flickering candles that cast eerie silhouettes upon the walls. He needed to understand more. Just beyond Lady Eveline, a figure loomed. Gregory, the estranged brother, who had returned after years away, with a reputation marred by scandal and gambling debts. There was a strange gleam of satisfaction in his eyes, obscured by a veil of schadenfreude, as he regarded his sister. "Lady Eveline, tell me more about the heirloom," Poirot prodded gently, recognizing the emotion alighting her features. Denial, fear, and something darker twinkled just beneath the surface. "What of your brother? What sins did he carry?" With trembling hands, she reached out towards the portrait, drawing it closer to her chest, her expressions flickering as if attempting to mask deeper truths. He sought to claim it for himself. He thought after our father's passing that it was his right. But I vowed it would remain in the family, untouched by greed. The irony hung heavily in the air. The heirloom, a symbol of love and legacy, had entwined their fates in a dance of betrayal. Poirot, his heart attuned to the intricate melodies of human feelings, felt the discord among the trio deepen. Next to Gregory stood Marissa, the enigmatic family friend, with an elegance that belied her. Hidden depths. She looked pale and cared too much for the implications behind Lady Eveline's claims, her fingers nervously twisting a bracelet that sparkled with echoes of past glories. "Surely it is folly to believe in curses," she interjected, her voice melodic but laced with tension. "Not all tragedies must rest upon specters from the past. Surely you cannot accuse your own brother." Gregory chuckled, a hollow sound that reverberated through the room. "Ah, but what better way to divert suspicion? You see, Marissa has always had too much influence on you, Eveline. Isn't it convenient how a curse can mask deceit?" His pointed statement cut through the air, leaving a pall of accusations hanging thick among them. Poirot observed, intrigued by the entanglement of love, jealousy, and desperation, a tragic tapestry woven from the threads of the past, suffocating any possibility of redemption. With each passing moment, Poirot meticulously pieced together their stories, weaving the chaos into something coherent. He engaged each character in an artful game of inquiry, his questions a delicate dance that revealed more than they meant to confess. "What of the night in question, dear friends? Where were we when darkness swept through here?" Lady Eveline faltered, her eyes darting. "I was searching for the pendant," she replied, "hidden away for years by my father, somewhere in the manor. I knew my brother would never let it rest." But Poirot's discerning eye caught Gregory's, brow twitching at her words, an involuntary movement betraying his emotions. "Ah, but perhaps there was an altogether different treasure that enticed you, Gregory? A legacy not of the heart, but of greed." He probed, knowing that the truth lay buried beneath layers of suspicion. The air hung heavy, charged with faint electric tension. The siblings' rivalry had blossomed into a ghastly flower of accusations and realized betrayals, each clutching at their truths, yet unwilling to confront the darkness that waited in the shadows. As the investigation unfolded, Poirot discovered fragmented notes and letters hidden in books, old correspondence, fraught with secrets. Gregory had gone deeper than he'd let on, and beneath the surface of sibling rivalry lay buried long-held resentments. Each clue brought forth more skirts of speculation, yet like a magician adept at misdirection, Gregory seemed to possess knowledge that led Poirot on a wild chase that left him questioning the very fabric of what he had thought true. "Oh, the humanity contained in self-preservation," he sighed inwardly, grappling with the depths to which one may sink to conceal their wounds. Just as Poirot began to unravel the intricacies of their motives, the clouds outside parted momentarily, like curtains drawing back, and bathed the room in an otherworldly glow. In that instant, his eyes landed on a detail that had previously escaped him, a smudge beneath the portrait, a black mark that whispered of nefarious intentions hidden beneath gilded surfaces. "Lady Eveline, tell me," Poirot's voice resonated with a quiet authority, "how did you find your brother lifeless? Did you witness the event unfold?" She wavered, a crestfallen revelation dawning in her eyes. I thought the pendant had simply cursed him. I had fled. I heard only the sound of crashing, the portrait swinging perilously before." She inhaled sharply. "I thought he had merely taken a misstep." Poirot absorbed every word, his mind weaving connections of intent and consequence with precision. With time drawing to a close, Poirot convened both Lady Eveline and Gregory, the atmosphere thickening as the truth loomed closer. "The heirloom is but a ruse, a veiled messenger of deceit crafted by the very ones who profess to guard it. Does it not ring true that there are fates sealed by the weight of choices made?" He posed, sharing the truth that cut deeper than any ruby pendant. "Gregory, you sought not vengeance but silence. The true curse lay dormant within, igniting an old discord. Your sister's protection coaxed you to lay waste to what lay unshielded." The implications had the air crackling with outrage, but then came the final revelation as his voice turned softer. "Marissa wished to protect Lady Eveline, but it was you who fought for her affections. Am I wrong?" The truth bore down on them, a coiled narrative unraveling into light, revealing Marissa's own longing, twisting into betrayal for the sake of love entwined with ambition. As the clock struck 1, illuminating the recesses of both hearts and crimes, Poirot made the final connection. And so, my friends, the greatest betrayal is often of our own making. What is it we cherish that leads us to cast stones? The curse is not that of a mere heirloom, but of lives shattered by ambitions and unspoken truths. Even as Lady Eveline and Gregory clung to each other, fear and regret etched across their features, Poirot's gaze remained firm, illuminating the shadows that lingered within. Alas, cher ami, it is the burden of the heart that bears the fraying thread of deceit, pulling all into its tangled design. As the final vestiges of candlelight flickered against their trembling forms, Poirot stepped back, leaving them with a truth that would echo relentlessly through the twisted corridors of their lives, much like the curse they had conjured. Chapter 8. An Unexpected Witness. The howling winds outside Eddington Manor entwined with a sudden hush. Within, unsettling the atmosphere, as if the very house held its breath in anticipation. Gossamer shadows flickered across the walls in desperate dance, and it was beneath this cloak of darkness that a piercing scream shattered the silence, echoing like a banshee's wail. Poirot, tucked away in a corner of the dimly lit drawing room, rose instinctively, his heart quickening. Mon Dieu, a cry like that is seldom born from good tidings, he murmured, sensing the electric tension that prickled in the air. He moved swiftly towards the source of the disturbance, following the sound that reverberated through the hall like a drumbeat of impending chaos. As he drew closer, he spotted Lady Eveline, standing rigid against the backdrop of the grand staircase, her usually dignified demeanor shattered, eyes wide with terror upon an unexpected sight that demanded an explanation. Clinging desperately to her intricately embroidered shawl, she pointed towards the library, words tumbling from her lips in quick succession. "It is Gregory. You must come. He lies there like a specter." Poirot, ever composed, felt a pulse of urgency quicken within him. "Lead the way, madame, but let us tread cautiously. The night may hold many surprises, some of which we cannot comprehend." The library was imbued with shadows, cast long by the single flickering candle upon the desk, where the late Sir Archibald's tome lay open, pages flapping softly as if in a breeze that did not exist. There, amidst the scattered books and forlorn piles of forgotten letters, lay the body of Gregory, pale and lifeless, a dark stain blossoming on his shirt, shading the fabric with secrets untold. Poirot knelt beside the still form, noting details that eluded others. "Ah, but what is this?" he murmured, inspecting the ground beneath them, where the pattern of footprints trailing away was obscured by the power of the storm raging outside. Rising and stepping back, Poirot took in the shock-stricken faces of those gathered in the doorway. Lady Eveline's expression oscillated between grief and fury, while Marissa's pallor deepened at the sight of her former friend's demise. With a calculated clarity, Poirot addressed the assembly. "Tell me, where were each of you at the moment of this tragic finding? And what about our now-departed Gregory? Had he roused any motion of suspicion in you prior?" The questions hung heavy in the air, and soon the trio began to speak, their responses laced with contradictions that caught his sharp ear. "I was in the garden," Lady Eveline declared, her quavering voice barely concealing the dread swirling within her. "My breath was drawn from the beautiful scent of petals being pelted by the rain." "None but the fool would indulge in such late whims," Marissa observed, her demeanor frenzied yet watchful. "I had taken it upon myself to retreat toward the kitchen, preparing an elixir to stave off the oncoming storm." "It is preposterous to assume there are strengths in specters we do not know," Gregory interjected from the ethereal realms of past grievances, a cruel mockery from the grave. The words hung, reverberating within Poirot's mind as he meticulously traced their narratives. Yet a fourth shadow caught his attention, the flicker of movement from the corner of his eye. He turned swiftly, catching sight of a trembling figure just beyond the threshold. It was Edgar, the aging butler, who had recently returned to the manor after years abroad, now haggard and wreathed in silence. The moment their eyes met, Poirot could discern the deep well of secrets hidden behind Edgar's downcast gaze. "Edgar, mon ami," Poirot hailed, his voice steady yet probing. "What do you know of this tragic turn? Do not think to evade the questions afoot." With an audible swallow, the butler stepped into the light, his demeanor both humble and resigned. "I have seen things that ought not to have been viewed. A figure was seen slipping through the shadows shortly after I brought in the tea from the drawing room." His intensity faltered there, as if grappling with the weight of his newfound truths. "That is quite intriguing, Edgar," Poirot responded. "Pray, do continue. What did this figure seem to want?" "There was a quarrel this very evening, sir," Edgar replied, glancing at Lady Eveline and Marissa. "I heard voices rising and falling in angry chorus, yet I dared not intrude, fearing what might unfold." Poirot's keen mind dissected every word spoken, pooling them with his own. Discoveries like drops of rain into a river of suspicion. "And what do you make of the wound upon Gregory's body? It surely tells a tale of its own." As the investigation deepened, Poirot uncovered intricate layers of potential motives, piecing together tales of rivalry, loyalty, and unspoken grudges. Marissa, torn between the loyalty to her friend and the burgeoning desire she held for Gregory, appeared frantic and defensive. Lady Eveline wore the mask of a grieving sister, yet sentimentary. Darkness twisted the corner of her heart, while Edgar, harboring his own years of secrets, now found himself faced with an unrelenting truth. In the days that followed, Poirot meticulously scrutinized the tattered fragments of correspondence found in Gregory's belongings, letters that whispered of troubling debts, a clandestine love affair, and dreams of revenge cloaked in the guise of family honor. And yet, amid the revelations, a red herring surfaced, one that turned suspicion brightly toward Marissa. It was her bracelet, a gift from Gregory, found clasped tightly in his hand at the moment of discovery. "Oh, but fool that I am," Poirot lamented softly. "I had momentarily lost grasp of the truth upon seeing the surface of the tragedy. The brimming jealousy, it is but a vessel for a far more insidious intent." When the chilling wind howled through the manor once again, carrying whispers from beyond the veil, Poirot gathered his suspects one last time, their faces twisting with indignation and fear. With poise, he began a relentless excavation of their hearts, layers of deceit unraveling like clouds around a bright and scornful moon. "Indeed, Lady Eveline, while I appreciate your horror at the turn of events, it is you where I must lay my suspicion. Could it be you sought to protect your own reputation, wishing for Gregory's impure ambitions to disappear entirely?" Her reaction was instantaneous, eyes smoldering with rage, yet Poirot's gaze remained steadfast. "Or, perhaps in the heat of emotional escape, you were blinded to the intimate truth behind your brother's death, one that lay buried within your heart?" As the truth poured forth, a final twist unveiled itself. The holder of the deepest betrayal had been Edgar all along. He, too, possessed a history with the family, and the echoes of a lost love had led him to slay the rival for the affections of both Gregory and Eveline. Poirot's mind raced as he stood before them, a sculptor of truth amidst a shattered gallery of lies and grief. And now, dear friends, we dance to the silence of the unyielding truths. The greatest betrayal is often from the ones we claim to protect. It is the heart, mon ami, that we cannot fully master. As the storm subsided, peace blanketed Eddington Manor, yet darkness lingered in the hearts of those it had forged. Poirot stepped back, surveying the emotional wreckage left in the wake of ambition and love, realizing that the cost of truth could forever scar the souls it endeavored to save. Thus, in the stillness thereafter, he uttered his final line: "Our burdens remain unwavering, even in the face of revelation." Chapter 9. Piecing it together. The night was drenched in shadows, the wind howling like a mournful specter as it rattled the windows of Eddington Manor, an unsettling echo against the silence that had fallen after the tragic demise of Gregory. Poirot, wrapped in his contemplative thoughts, perched resolutely in the drawing room, the dim flicker of candlelight casting elongated shapes on the wall, a dance of shadows that mirrored the tumultuous hearts of those who remained. It was then that the stillness broke, a shiver of dread igniting within him as a sudden, bone-chilling scream pierced the air, revealing a deeper chaos lying beneath the manor's facade of elegance. He stepped into the hallway, the echo of that scream still reverberating in his ears. The remnants of shock and despair clung to Lady Eveline and Marissa, their faces pale, eyes wide with fear, a stark contrast to the poised countenance Poirot had come to expect from them. Edgar, the butler, stood rigid, his hands clasped tightly before him, knuckles white against the tremors of anxiety. "Mon Dieu," Poirot murmured with an air of foreboding. "The tempest has not yet relinquished its hold upon us. It seems we are ensnared in a web of anguish and betrayal, are we not?" With the air thick with tension, Poirot returned to the library where Gregory had met, his untimely end. His mind started to work with meticulous precision, sifting through the chaotic, emotional landscape of the living. So many threads to unravel, yet each seemed to lead back to the heart of the storm. The candlelight flickered overhead, illuminating the scattered letters. Words of love, jealousy, and bitterness yearning for life beyond their penned existence. "Ah, but the human heart, it hides many things, mon ami," he whispered to himself, noting how easily emotions could corrode, even the strongest of bonds. Lady Eveline, visibly shaken, had retreated into the solitude of grief and indignation. A protective sister, she had often seemed to cradle the weight of familial honor upon her shoulders. Yet a darkness lurked there, one that Poirot had glimpsed before. "Tell me, madam, what was your relationship with Gregory?" he probed delicately. Her eyes flashed, an unsettling mixture of sorrow and anger. "He was my brother, a flawed man with a penchant for ruin. He sought to drag our family name through the mud for the sake of foolish passions." But Poirot sensed a deviation in her defense, an omission thick as the tide of an approaching storm. "And yet, did he not hold a certain sway over your affections? Perhaps a hidden resentment we were both too blind to perceive?" She met his gaze fiercely, questioning yet withholding what bubbled within. The tension shifted suddenly as Marissa interjected, her voice strained with anxiety. "Lady Eveline's grief has clouded her judgment. Gregory was a threat to us all. His ambitions grew darker as the days passed. He toyed with hearts and dreams, yet cared little for the consequences." Her eyes darted, revealing a flicker of something deeper. A fear or perhaps a longing to extricate herself from the web of deception surrounding them. Poirot turned, gathering fragments one by one. "But you too had desires for the gentleman, did you not? A clandestine affection that may have turned foul, should it have been thwarted." She stiffened, her silence betraying the turmoil beneath her composed exterior. A denial that spoke volumes of deceits entwined. It was Edgar who caught Poirot's keen gaze next, a timid figure now standing paler than before. "But Edgar, mon ami," Poirot said with gentle authority, "throughout this calamity, I have noticed your quietude. What shadows do you harbor in your heart?" The butler swallowed hard, the weight of unspoken burdens etched upon his brow. "I have witnessed things no man ought to. See, sir, there were conversations in darkened corners where Gregory's name loomed large, him being a rival in matters both of the heart and family business. Yet I confess I wish to shield the lady from further pain. Yet the revelations seemed merely a game of smoke and mirrors, each character a pawn maneuvering across a board of tangled ambitions and hidden truths." Poirot meticulously pieced together letters left behind, words lovingly crafted which hinted at a clandestine affair, debts that were suffocatingly high, and a brother trapped by ambition. An intricate tapestry of relationships began to waver. Amidst the mounting confessions, one detail stood stark against the swirling storm of lies. A necklace adorned with intricate designs still clasped in Gregory's cold grip had been identified as belonging to Marissa, yet its significance remained elusive. With the winds raging outside, Poirot gathered them once more in the drawing room. The atmosphere was thick with unease, punctuated by the steady rhythm of the clock, the metronome of their collective anxiety. His gaze swept across the three. "Do you realize, dear friends, how each of you possesses chains of culpability as heavy as any sterling silver?" Their faces contorted, shadows of suspicion dancing within their eyes as he laid forth the tangential connections. "Do not underestimate the winds of jealousy, nor the fierce tempest of ambition that can drive even the purest souls to darkness." It was then that the first twist revealed itself, a confession unfurling from Edgar unexpectedly. "I did not wish for Lady Eveline to suffer another loss. It was I who instilled doubts in Gregory's heart, leading him to question his worth. An uncomfortable silence settled over the room, shifting the weight of guilt from one shoulder to another. Yet Poirot knew folly often disguised intimacy in the thick of darkness. The final revelation struck them like thunder, a bolt of clarity illuminating the twisted knot gone. Wrong. Poirot turned to Marissa, the weight of her decisions bearing down upon him. You immeasurably loved him, yet could not bear witness to such ambition corrupting his spirit. But you acted, did you not, with the fervor of one desperate to shield what they hold dear? Her face crumbled under the burden of guilt, the confession unspooling as tears streamed down her cheeks. And it was then that Poirot's heart thudded painfully against his ribs. The final twist revealed a hidden truth. It was Marissa, consumed by jealousy and false loyalty, who had thrust the dagger into Gregory, but not to steal him away. It was a misguided act of love, one that fragmented all they desired to protect. Ah, the curse of love, he articulated softly. It often bears the fruit of betrayal. The revelation resonated through Eddington Manor, the weight of heartbreak and anguish settling upon them like a mournful cloak. Poirot stepped back, allowing the truth to sink in. The chain of ambition had ensnared them all. As silence enveloped the room once more, he concluded, and so, dear friends, it is not merely the knife that pierces, but the heart that drives it forth. In our quest for ambition, we craft our own demise. We must live henceforth with the shadows we have conjured. Chapter 10. The Final Betrayal. The storm outside Eddington Manor raged with a palpable fury, the wind howling like a banshee, rattling the windows as if attempting to break through the very seams of the house. It was on such a night that the whispers of the past refused to remain dormant. A figure lay lifeless upon the hardwood floor of the drawing room, the blood seeping through the ornate carpet, a sight that seemed to draw the very breath from the air. The foreboding atmosphere enveloped the scene as Hercule Poirot, with his elegantly coiffed hair and trademark meticulousness, surveyed the room with a deliberative calmness that belied the chaos around him. Ah, mais oui, Poirot murmured, his sharp gaze darting to the faces of those present, absorbing the trembling reverberations of shock that coursed through the air like an electric charge. Lady Eveline, with her porcelain skin now marred by shock, stood frozen at the doorway, her hand clasping the edge as if she might shatter with the slightest breath. Marissa knelt on the ground shaking, her tears mingling with the pooled crimson, a horrific tableau of despair and horror. Edgar, the butler, hovered protectively by the fireplace, his hands trembling ever so slightly. The darkness of human ambition has unveiled itself once more, my friends, Poirot observed, the chill in his voice juxtaposed against the flickering light of the candles, their drawn-out shadows dancing eerily against the walls. As the storm howled with renewed vigor outside, Poirot stepped further into the chaos of the drawing room, his eyes honing in on the murder weapon. A delicate dagger glimmering cruelly in the dim light, still grasped in the hand of the deceased, a sign of betrayal yet to be unearthed. He knelt beside the body, his experienced eyes narrowing at the interplay of details, the position of the body, the slight scuff marks on the floor, the scent of jasmine wafting through the air, a fragrance so unmistakably associated with Marissa. He lifted his gaze, taking in the three figures before him with their myriad emotions bubbling just beneath the surface, beneath the exquisite facades they wore. Tell me, he started, his voice a smooth melodic blend of inquiry and authority, what transpired here? Who among you possesses the fortitude to declare their innocence in the face of such malevolence? Eveline, still rooted in her shock, stammered, It was betrayal, Monsieur Poirot. Gregory's ambitions had grown darker, encroaching upon the very sanctity of our family. He wished to seize control of our estate. What was his reason for this madness? Anguish painted her expression, but Poirot saw the flicker of a deeper complexity within her. Marissa looked up, her face pale but emboldened. No, Lady Eveline, you know the truth. Gregory spoke of ascendancy, true, but he was overstepping bounds that should never be crossed. His unrepressed desires tarnished everything we held dear. Such vehement declarations, Poirot noted, were not merely emotional outbursts, but clues, wrapped in layers of intricate reasoning and denial. "And you, dear Edgar?" Poirot turned his inquiry toward the butler, whose demeanor had visibly altered as the conversation escalated. "You observed much, did you not? Perhaps too much? Is it not true that you held an unfaltering loyalty to the family? What secrets do you guard so closely?" Edgar's face paled, and he took a moment, inhaling deeply as he gathered his bearings. I endured their quarrels. Gregory's schemes often drifted into dangerous waters. There were whispers, furtive conversations, and shadows that warned of ambitions heading toward ruin. His voice trembled, betraying the facade of composure he attempted to uphold. Poirot sank deeper into contemplation, the pieces of the puzzle swirling forcefully in his mind, but not coalescing yet. There lay the artistry of deceit crafted with such care that it became the enigma itself. He observed the nuances, the way Marissa flinched at the mention of the dagger, or how Lady Eveline's knuckles turned white as she indicated they must find the truth. Without warning, the power flickered, plunging the room into tenuous darkness, illuminated only by the erratic flashes of lightning that streaked across the sky. The air thickened with tension, and Poirot seized the moment. "Let us not murmur in shadows, but confront our truths," he exclaimed. "What say you, my companions? Is not the heart a treacherous keeper of secrets? Tell me about this dagger. Who among you can assure me of its prominence in this tragedy?" Eveline's voice echoed defiantly. "It is nothing more than an instrument, one wielded by someone whose heart is deceitful. Gregory lived by the sword and died by it. But who gave him this dagger?" At that moment, countless possibilities began to unfold, entangling themselves tightly like a web spun by a masterful arachnid. In the ensuing hours, Poirot meticulously untangled the threads of their existences. A misplaced letter of inheritance unearthed by Lady Eveline, the unbidden affection between Marissa and Gregory that had morphed into jealousy, the unresolved resentment simmering within. Edgar. Each thread danced tantalizingly in the light of truth and suspicion. As he relaxed against the dusty leather cushions later, with the wind howling yet again, as if urging him to illuminate the truth, Poirot's mind whirred, grappling at a realization that cracked the icy grip of doubt. He pieced together the past, confronted the shadows that lay hidden beneath heavy layers of grief and ambition. The cold truth crystallized. There, among the ashes of emotion, rested the dagger of betrayal itself. With a steely gaze, he gathered them once more in the drawing room, the ambience heavy with their collective fear and guilt. "My dear friends," he began, his tone unwavering, "the heart, as I have often said, conceals much beneath its surface. You are all entwined in a deadly dance, and yet I find the true dance partner was none other than the one whose absence guides the chaos. The blade was meant for Gregory, but it was Marissa who took the charge, driven by the flames of a love turned sour. A hush settled around them, disbelief etched on every face, save for Marissa's striking despair that weighed heavily against the walls of her guilt. "No," she gasped, "I did not wish to harm him. It was intended for the one who seeks to tarnish our name. He drove me to madness. My love turned to dust." "But it was you," Poirot continued, "who manipulated your feelings into something unrecognizable, letting ambition twist your heart into that of a betrayer. You sought to shield your love, only to plunge the dagger through the heart of the very one you wished to protect." The shock washed over the room like a sudden downpour, soaking each person in sorrow, a tempest that no one could escape. As the final piece of their melodrama settled like debris in the aftermath of the storm, Poirot caught sight of a necklace within Marissa's grasp, its familiar design reminiscent of the past, symbolizing yet another betrayal buried under the ashes of a lost affection. "What a tragic tale we weave," he whispered, the weight of sorrow enveloping him as he stepped back, allowing the truth to seep into the understanding of them all. In the stillness that followed, Poirot uttered a final proclamation, a line destined to haunt the very fabric of their souls. It is not merely the dagger that pierces, but the betrayal that drives a soul to destruction. Chapter 11. The Truth Behind the Veil. The lightning flashed, illuminating Eddington Manor's sinister silhouette, stark against the stormy night sky, Within its hallowed halls, a piercing scream shattered the tense silence, echoing through the shadows like the cry of a lost soul. Poirot, attending to his delicate introspection by the flickering candlelight, felt an unsettling chill creep up his spine. Inexplicable dread filled the air. Something dark had permeated this night. His heart raced, but his mind raced faster, instinctively recognizing the ominous tone of chaos that cloaked the manor. As he swiftly navigated through the dim corridors, the metallic scent of blood clung to the walls, whispering secrets of a recent transgression. In the drawing room, he discovered the lifeless body of Lady Evelyn, crumpled elegantly in a corner, her delicate fingers twitching as if reaching toward the ghosts of her past. The confrontation was stark. Gregory's ambitions had been a mere prelude to deeper treachery, and in her lifeless gaze, Poirot detected the haunting echoes of betrayal. Ah, but the human heart, it hides many things, mon ami, he murmured as he assessed the scene, finding himself encircled by the remaining three souls who bore the burden of secrets. Marissa, her alabaster skin now marred by blood speckles, stood frozen, her eyes brimming with confusion, its depths a whirlpool of emotions, both familiar and alarming. Edgar, the loyal butler, hovered protectively near the hearth, his expression betraying a mixture of disbelief and fear. And then, beyond the flickering shadows, there was Charles. Lady Evelyn's brother, his presence shrouded with intentions veiled under layers of anguish and resentment towards his sister's fortune. Poirot's discerning gaze shifted among them, detecting the tremors of vulnerability that lingered in their auras. Mademoiselle Marissa, he began, his voice cutting through the palpable tension, where were you amidst this tempest of emotion? Did you not hear your dear friend's anguish? Her mouth quivered, but she stammered out a shaky alibi, claiming she was tending to the garden, a most curious assertion on such a night, where the rain poured as if the heavens were weeping for what had transpired. Edgar, who had served the family for countless years, cleared his throat. Monsieur Poirot, Lady Evelyn. She spoke of feelings that tormented her soul. In her final days, she feared betrayal lurked near, that winds of disloyalty tugged at the very fabric of our family, he said, his voice laced with an earnestness that offered both insight and suspicion. But tell me, Edgar, Poirot interrupted, his eyebrows drawing together. What do you know? Deceit often shrouds itself in loyalty, does it not? Edgar's eyes widened at the insinuation, his composure faltering for the briefest moment as he glanced at Marissa, then hastily redirected his gaze to Poirot. Poirot's keen intuition noted the telltale signs, the sense unbidden, the unguarded body language. They entwined themselves in a dance reminiscent of the intricate web formed by the fates of the deceased. Perhaps Lady Evelyn's fears did hold water, yet he sensed a deeper current flowing beneath the surface, one that beckoned him to delve into the frayed threads of familial ties. As the tempest outside howled, shifting their focus to the meeting of their minds, Poirot sought the clues hidden around the room. Engaging each character further, he probed Charles, closely observing the fit of his pocket watch, its steady tick a contrast to the frantic nature of the evening. Did you not hear the ominous cries of your sister, Monsieur Charles? Surely a brother must feel the tremors of a sister in distress. Charles straightened, the muscle in his jaw tightening. She was always dramatic, Poirot. Tied down by her riches and the burden of family expectation, she sought freedom in insubordination. But, his voice faltered, the resentment barely disguising itself under the surface. One's freedom might attract shadows unseen. At that moment, a distinct rattling caught Poirot's attention, a forgotten silver locket perched beneath a piano bench. He stooped to retrieve it, dusting off its ornate surface, recognizing the engraved initials within, a monogram of L.E. Ah, what secrets do you hold, my dear? And upon looking back toward the three faces before him, each exuding a peculiar heaviness, he sensed their palpable hesitation to unveil the contents of their hearts. With every questioning light that Poirot cast upon them, unexpected truths began to unveil themselves, thick with the scent of desperation and veiled ambitions. Marissa's stammer morphed into broken bravado, confessing that Lady Eveline had threatened to foreclose on her dreams of independence, while Edgar revealed secrets locked away in hidden letters, a child's inheritance buried beneath grudging debts stemming from their mother's clandestine affairs. The rising tension thickened as Poirot observed how each character attempted to manipulate the conversation, attempting to obscure their motives. The candle's light flickered nervously, reflecting their shrouded intentions. Yet beneath it all, the truth began to forge itself like an indelible mark on their souls. With the revelations simmering in the air, Poirot gathered them once more in the drawing room, their collective fear palpable as the storm pounded harmful intentions through the walls. "Friends," he articulated calmly, "betrayal has emerged not unlike the storm outside, revealing the cracks in our humanity." The quiet gasp of Charles mingled ominously with Marissa's tremulous sob. He continued, "What seems straightforward is but a facade behind which deception festers. You sought your fortunes, but Lady Eveline stood as the barrier. Those cries you heard?" He turned his regard to Marissa, whose trepidation hinted at self-recrimination. "Yet it was she who paid the price of your ambition, a sacrifice meant not for love, but for the fear of losing your dreams." The revelation hung heavily in the air, approaches to betrayal wrapped in half-truths unveiled. Poirot's concluding remark struck like a poignant sorrow cutting through summer's heat. As the philanderer of fate entangles, it shields itself in iron masks adorned with the jewels of innocence. And upon the dagger of ambition, my dear friends, it is betrayal that always finds the true mark. The room fell silent, a contemplative shroud wrapping around them as they began understanding each thread of wound to heal, each revelation turning the embers of grief anew. In their hearts, the storm had not simply raged, it had awakened a torrent of buried truths ready to ignite their night, a truth hidden behind the veil now laid bare. Chapter 12. Justice Served Cold. A scream pierced the suffocating silence of the night, a sound so raw that it sent shivers down the spine of anyone who dared to listen. The grand chandelier in the drawing room of Eddington Manor hung precariously, its crystals trembling as if in response to the chaos that had unfolded. Beneath it, Hercule Poirot felt the weight of dread fill the air, each heartbeat echoing like the tolling of a bell, signaling that the time had come to face the truth amidst the shadows. The storm outside howled with an intensity that could only be matched by the turmoil within the minds of those congregated there, held captive by their own secrets. In the center of the room lay the lifeless body of Edgar, the loyal butler. His once proud stature now crumpled against the dark oak floor, a pool of crimson seeping outward, stark against the mahogany. It was a tableau of bitterness, one man's fall replete with betrayal and deception. Poirot stepped slowly around the scene, deliberate in his movements, his mind whirring with questions that demanded answers. How had it come to pass that within just days of Lady Eveline's murder, another soul had been extinguished? The darkness whispered secrets, and Poirot, the ever-diligent observer, sought to illuminate them. "Ah, but the human heart! It hides many things, mon ami," he murmured, gazing at Edgar's lifeless form. The flickering candlelight danced across the room, casting eerie shadows that seemed to respond to Poirot's thoughts. He quickly surveyed the faces in the room, each twisted with shock or grief. Marissa, her eyes still brimming with guilt. Charles, his jaw set, as if bracing against unseen winds. And Gregory, who appeared an amalgamation of confusion and indignation. Their reactions were a symphony of emotions, yet within them lay threads of discord that Poirot could not ignore. "Who among you will carry the burden of this latest tragedy?" he inquired, turning his gaze upon the cloistered figures. "What dark secrets have intertwined your fates once more?" His voice, though calm, resonated with an authority that compelled them to speak. Marissa was the first to falter, her hands trembling as she clutched the pendant around her neck, an heirloom, now a shackle of memories. "I saw nothing," she stammered, the words escaping her lips like a confession of guilt. "I was in the garden, tending to the roses." Poirot narrowed his eyes, for he could not reconcile her alibi with the thunderous downpour that had inundated the grounds. "Ah, non, a lover of nature you may be, mademoiselle, but logic suggests otherwise," he replied, dissecting her words as delicately as a surgeon. "In such a tempest, Who would venture into elements so fierce? Perhaps then you carry more burden than mere guilt. Charles scoffed, his frustration spilling forth. What a farce this is. We all know Edgar could be trusted less than a street dog, always lurking at the door for scraps, always burying secrets. He had no love for our family, and now he pays the price for it. Charles's resentful anger hung palpably in the air, a thin veil hiding his darker intentions. Poirot sensed the flourish of malice behind his words, yet there was a discontent, a flicker of something more profound hidden beneath the bravado. Gregory, who had remained silent till now, erupted in desperate defense. "Stop this insipid bickering! What good does it serve?" He glanced at Edgar's still form, sorrow morphing into anger. He was a faithful servant. He did not deserve this. His voice cracked, tension straining thinly across the room like the sound of a taut bowstring, poised to snap. Poirot's gaze glimmered with keen interest. The entangled lies and shadows in the room sharpened his senses. He explored the surroundings, examining the significance of each item. The overturned armchair, a broken vase that had spilled its contents upon the floor, fragments glimmering like a shattered dream. What had sparked this violent chaos? As he put together the puzzle pieces, another disturbing thought surfaced. Edgar had hidden a secret. Perhaps it was hidden letters that could unravel the fabric of family loyalty. Poirot swiftly motioned toward the hearth, where a faded envelope lay partially obscured by ashes, as though it had been carelessly discarded. He approached with purpose, the air thickening with anticipation as he delicately retrieved it, his heart pounding against the impending revelations. To speak of betrayal, one must first recognize loss, he intoned, unfurling the letter's contents. And perhaps, my dear friends, it was not merely Edgar's downfall that sealed his fate. His eyes alighted upon the scrawled name, Lady Evelyn. The shadows twisted around him, and he fathomed a deeper layer of involvement that connected Edgar, Marissa, and even Charles in a dance of ambition gone awry. Justice, to be served cold, is but a bullet to the heart, Poirot declared, his voice echoing in the charged space, and he studied his suspects intently, keenly aware of their grim reactions. Fear nestled in their expressions. Conflict and dread brewed like storm clouds above them, ready to unleash upon their brittle facades. With the ignition of doubt now spiraling within them, Poirot gathered his thoughts and unveiled what he believed was the truth. "The heirloom necklace you wear, Mademoiselle Marissa," he gestured toward her gripping hands, "it bears the weight of a past marred by discontent. You thought to emancipate your position by marrying Gregory, thus hiding behind the facade of love, while truly yearning to shackle the fortune of your friend. Did you not wish for the bond to last?" "Stop!" she cried, her voice thick with desperation. "You know nothing of my heart." But Poirot, unimpressed, pressed on. Yet the feeling of duty was counteracted by a longing for independence. Was it not? You sought to solidify your freedom through rooftops of deceit, while fervently clinging to the fortune that could elevate your status above family. And Edgar? The murmur of unrest rippled through the group as silence enveloped them, their secrets coiling around each other like a serpent ready to strike. Poirot caught the shift in energies, the glassy eyes of betrayal, the rigid stances of denial, and the fraught moments where the truth sought to transcend their grim realities. "As you huddled in shadows, Edgar knew too much," he continued, relentless in his deductions. He had become the guardian of truths buried deep, most notably a hidden inheritance meant for a child cast aside, secrets that would rattle the very foundations of your ambitions. And there it was, a moment of stillness as the full weight of his proclamation settled in. Realization washed over them, betrayal upon betrayal, layered like the most exquisite wines, fermented by jealousy and deception, while the heart of the unyielding mystery throbbed palpably beneath the surface. "Alas," Poirot concluded, his voice now resonant with compassion, but edged with resolution, "when justice is sought, it is served upon the dancing edge of cold steel, piercing through the facade to expose the broken dreams left in its wake. The path to freedom was but a one-way street, monstrous in its own revulsion. With that enduring finality, Poirot stepped back, understanding the storm had indeed quelled. The night had gripped them in darkness, but the dawn would yield a new awakening. "Remember, my dear friends," he murmured as he turned away from them, "truth may elude the fleeting gaze, yet it stands eternal against the breath of time.